What is going on, party people in the house? Mainly Rodolfo, who's got the title back. Hold on, guys. Let me tweet this thing out. Uh so we get this thing going. Hold on one second. That intro is just not long enough. I love it though. The intro is kind of badass. I'm not gonna lie, but it does leave for a really bad start. So hold on. Tweet. There we go. And now I'm back. Undivided attention. Welcome back, everybody, party people in the house. It is Wednesday night, and if it is Wednesday night, you know what time it is. It is time for your Drunk Unk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, your Drunk Unk, Anwar Richardson. Happy day after 4th of July to everybody. Hope everyone's having a good time. Everyone's being safe. I see everyone piling in right now, which is great. What's up to a lot of the crew that I appreciate you guys coming in. And I know that when you guys are getting in, it's awesome. Man, actually, it's too many for me to acknowledge all the way, but I'll acknowledge you guys throughout the show. Speaking of, man, let me go ahead and get this thing out the way. The show's brought to you by my main man, El Presidente, Eric Sells Homes, DFW. Look, if you're looking for a home in the DFW area, look no further than my main man, El Presidente, Eric Sells Homes, DFW.com. He's the person, he's the hookup, he's the man with the master plan. He's like Master P back in that day when he was selling cell phones and I got the hookup. He's selling homes and he's got the hookup for you. Making sure you hit him up. He's a Longhorn guy, Longhorn fan, contributor on the show. By the way, I've been promising you guys stuff. Got some plans for him and Tom G in the future. It's gonna be kind of nice. I'm not gonna spoil it, but you guys are definitely going to enjoy it as they move into some new roles and new homes here on OB. You too can be a star. So listen, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you. You know what I always say? If you're having a bad week, it's about to get a lot better. And if you're having a good week, well, we're just gonna take you over the top and make sure you just close out this week strong, all right? Because we're going to have a good time. I'm in a good mood, feeling excited, have 4th of July. Yesterday, what'd you guys do? Anybody do anything fun, excited? Some guys out on the lake. Hopefully nobody did anything too crazy. Man, we had, my community had like a little parade in there with like a little fire, what is it? Well, anyway, little fire people came through, cops came through. It was like a little parade and stuff like that with kids and all the other kind of stuff. So that was cute. Then they had a pool party. So I was out there for a while. Just had his drink. I started about 10:30. it was can't stop, won't stop at that point. I took that purple pill. You guys take that thing, like that purple leaf thing, to make sure, like, if you drink, you don't get the after effects. I took that beforehand. Was good. Came back, got a little nap in, woke back up. I was good. Had a friend around, so was great. Was great. Had a great time. All I can tell you, it was a lot of fireworks going on in Cedar Park. I can tell you that, guaranteed. But anyway, had a fantastic time considering my kid-free excursions and enjoying myself. So that part was really, really good. And then then today we're kind of back at it, guys. We are back at it again, and there's a lot of the little things for us to discuss as we start talking about the Big 12, and there's a lot of things that came out today, and there's ways I want to set it up and make sure we have a good time tonight. So you guys get yourself a drink. Hope you're toasting to something. Toast to you and toast to Nunu. All right, let's do it. All right, so this is the time of year, guys. This is the time of year where there is I call it, when I'm putting my notes, show notes for tonight, it's kind of the preseason hype season. Like, this is the preseason hype season, right? And it ends up being something that everyone is hyped all around the country on all levels. Not just going to be like the University of Texas, all levels, all programs, whether you didn't win a game last year or you won them all last year, everybody is excited around this time of year, right? And there's so many things that go into this, the preseason hype thing. And so there's awards, there's all these kinds of things. But the greatest part about this time of year for everybody is that your team is 0-0. They're undefeated. No wins, no losses, but it's undefeated. And so everybody, I'm talking about everybody, is excited about this time of the year. It was the thing that I remember when I worked in, I covered the NFL for years, and I covered high school sports for years, and I've done everything, right? I've covered everything, but always the build-up to a season was always the greatest part. It always usually the most joy. Hell, I covered boxing for years. I'm going to guys know that I used to be a boxing writer as well. I'm still a lot of stuff, but I used to be a boxing writer. I've covered Floyd Mayweather fights. I covered Mike Tyson. That's how old I am. I covered Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis at the Pyramid in Memphis years ago. You guys have to look up and see what year that was. But I was there for that fight when he got knocked out. What's interesting about that whole thing was there was a guy. One of the reasons I got to cover that fight is because one of the fighters I covered from the Tampa Bay area, his name was Jeff Lacey. And Jeff Lacey was going to be on the undercard of that fight. And of course, it was going to be the Tyson fight. So I kind of parlayed it and told my bosses, like, hey, Jeff Lacey's going to be fighting on here. And then, of course, Tyson's going to be the main event. So, like, okay, you can knock out two birds with one stone. I look back on that card. You know what else was on the undercard of that one? Manny Pacquiao. A young Manny Pacquiao was on that card, right? But even still, by the way, that's my first time in Memphis. Woo! I can understand why they have all those first 48 shows in Memphis. Boy, I didn't know how to travel. I didn't know where I was staying. I stayed in a place where I was like, man, I hope I get out of here. I mean, it's one of those things. I was trying to be nice to the company and be cool with the little travel budget. Never did that again. Never did that again, because I was in the hood. And I'm like, man, this is not good. But anyway, I got out of Memphis, thank God. But even leading up to all the fights and boxing, everyone has optimism, right? Every single person has this thing of optimism, and you find a way of telling yourself that this thing is going to be different, and all the things that you did previously to lead up to this is going to be different. You guys know the thing that I refer to the most when it comes to preseason stories, and the thing I refer to the most when we talk about preseason hype. You guys remember the summer of ping pong? Do you guys remember, and I've said this before, you guys, if you listen to the show, I've said this before, the Shane Buechele story. Oh, Shane Buechele is killing them in ping pong. That's why Texas is going to be so good, because he's so competitive. Everybody's trying to beat Shane on the ping pong table. Man, damn it, man. It was the summer of ping pong, dog. It was the summer of ping pong, which absolutely meant nothing. One of the dumbest storylines I can ever remember in the history of covering any team, let alone this team, right? And so, but people thought ping pong was somehow going to equate to success. Doesn't always work that way. It's not how it always is. But the greatest part right around this time, this July period, right before we get to training camp and everything like that, this is the highest of optimism that it would be. This is why I always tell you guys, the Kool-Aid pours harder and stronger this time of year, more so than anything else. This is the time of year where you convince yourself, especially as Longhorn fans, you convince yourself, you tell yourself, man, 10 is in the bag, right? 10 is absolutely in the bag, and why not more, right? That is how you do it. Remember our boy Kieran does did that famous video where he went viral for it. A shout out to him, man. I hope he's doing well. But how you talk yourself into it. Now Longhorn fans would just kind of talk themselves into it. I hope he does another one, by the way. And if you guys see him and talk to him, like tell him, Kieran, he's got to do another one of those. He just got to update it and just do it every single year. But this becomes that kind of that time for that, right? And so it's interesting because a week from now, guys, a week from today will be the start of Big 12 Media Days. Okay, Big 12 Media Days is next week. Literally, when I come to you guys next week, I will be in a hotel room in Arlington breaking down and talking to you guys about the things that Steve Sarkisian said at Big 12 Media Days, and then talking about what the players also talked about during Big 12 Media Days, which is crazy. And then the following week after that, that Monday would start SEC Media Days, right? Which is, again, Big 12 Media Days, like I always say, it's that concert, that festival, that music fest where there's an act that performs around like, 4-ish, 5-ish, maybe 5-ish or so, 6-ish or so. Good, really good. But SEC is like that headliner that it gets to come on at like 12:30 at night, and you hang around and you don't give a damn because you're like, it's the SEC. That's what you're here for, and the party starts when that thing gets started. So the SEC will be there. And it's kind of interesting too. And one of the things I want to write for Sunday, and actually I can need some of you guys' help. I was trying to think, and if you could put this in the chat, I would really appreciate it. I was trying to think as Texas, and this will be like the farewell tour, right? And this is kind of the beginning of the farewell tour for Texas, like the first big event, because this will be the last time. So the first of the last, right? So the last time that Texas, what's up, Terry goes, can you bring me a t-shirt from Media Days? Hey, there ain't gonna be nothing like that. But this will be the last time. I'm curious from what you guys remember. What's the biggest, once this thing's all said and done, what will be the biggest Big 12 memory, Big 12 Media Day memory that you'll have? Like, I'm trying to think of it because I was trying to think in my head, okay, what's the biggest memory that I have? And the only thing I could come up with was like when Tom Herman was asked about like how many elite players he had, and it took him like 20 seconds to think about it, and he just came back with some, and so I'm trying to think of, because I'm still trying to put together a list. And you guys might have a better working list. If you could think of it and put something in the chat for me, I'd appreciate it. Because I couldn't come up with anything, but I thought to myself, this was one of the big, like, goodbye, something to that effect. Blake is right with the Venables fire hose. And anything past that, I'm just trying to think what else was notable about Big 12 Media Days when it's like all said and done. Is there going to be anything that we'll look back and say, I remember that? You're going to say, man, I don't remember none of these ones. Not a damn one stood out in memory. So put that in the chat if you can. And so now we kind of get into this realm of preseason hype, preseason expectations, and it's like, here we go, right? And so I was looking, and you guys have looked at stuff, but I was looking at something today. And I was looking at Twitter, I'm a follower of Brett McMurphy, and I want to make sure I kind of go in this order. Okay, so I was following Brett McMurphy, and one of the things that he had tweeted out, he works at the Action Network. Brett used to work, obviously at ESPN for a number of years, CBS Sports before that, and actually at the time, Brett and I actually used to work together at the Tampa Tribune for a number of years. So I've known Brett probably easily, 20 plus years of my life. So easily 25 at least. I think I started in Tampa as a correspondent, I want to say in like 94, and then got a full-time job in January of 96. That was when it was I didn't graduate I graduated like in the winter. So whatever that is, so from the time I started in 94 until then, that's probably how long I've known Brett. And so he tweets this thing out, and we start talking about heights and expectations and kind of getting this thing going, right? And so he tweets this thing out, and one of his co-workers, this guy by the name of Colin Wilson, really good guy. Like really, I got a chance to meet him last year, and I was kind of like unsure of who he was. I didn't know. He like kind of end up. We just kind of ended up sitting next to each other, and to be honest, I don't really talk to a lot of media people. I talk to them, but I don't. It's just the vibe, right? And then by the end of the Big 12 Media Days, like we had a great vibe. I really liked him. Like he was a really smart guy, really bright guy, and so he came up with kind of like a number of games that teams are going to be projected to be favorites in 2023, right? So the number of games that teams are going to be projected to be a favorite in 2023. This is courtesy of the Action Network. So 12 games, aka undefeated season. They've have Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Michigan, and Washington. They will be essentially favored in every single game that they play this season. The Washington pick is an interesting pick. There's some money. I've seen some Heisman odds on Penix, and I'm telling you, those odds look so good. You should put a little something down. Like I'm just going to tell you, you should put a little something down on Penix to win the Heisman. I know you guys are obviously clearly. I know where your heart's at. And listen, if he does win it, if Quinn wins it, hell to the yeah, absolutely want that. But hedge your bet. I'll put a little something down on Penix because I think the payoff on that one would be kind of hot. I'm just gonna throw that out there. So Washington will be projected to win every single game. Okay, and then there's the 11 games, right? And so they've got Clemson and Florida State at 11 as well. Okay, but here's the other teams: Liberty, UNC, Ohio State, Oklahoma. Interesting. South Alabama. They've got Toledo, Tulane, Utah, Wisconsin, and I saved the best for last, even though it wasn't in that order. Texas will be projected to win 11 out of 12 games this season. 11 out of 12. That's simple math. That's 11-1. I mean, do you need fuel for your fire for preseason hype? And clearly the one game that we're talking about that Texas won't be a favorite in is obviously it's just going to be Bama, right? That's the only one. Texas is going to be a favorite in every single other game this season. That means the odds will be, stacked against you as far as betting it, for Texas. It'll be one time that you'll probably be able to make some really good money, and then outside, which would be the Bama game. Then outside of that, it's going to be, you're probably not going to make as much, right? Unless you're going to get here and get on Prize Picks and get back with us during the regular season and do fantasy picks, to which you will definitely be able to make some money. Uncleared. I had to claim some stuff on my taxes. So, and I claimed it, just so we clear. It's been claimed. I claimed all that stuff. Don't nobody try to audit me. I know the IRS is trying to audit people more and more nowadays. I cleared it. Anyway, there's that. So we've got that thing going. And what's interesting, I kind of went down the list. Here's what's interesting. A team that's going to be favored to win 10 out of 12 games. They'll be the favorite in 10 out of 12 games. I won't go through the entire list of them, but this one stood out to me, kind of shocked me a little bit. Baylor is expected to be the favorite in 10 out of 12 games this season, which probably means they won't be a favorite to win against Texas, and more than likely probably not a favorite to win maybe against like an Oklahoma. And outside of that, Baylor is projected to probably be a 10-2, just kind of based off of that. Didn't see that coming, which means I've got to do more research on Baylor to find out what the hell is going on down there in Waco that I may not know about and I may not be aware of, that all of a sudden Baylor might be a team that we need to keep on our radar going forward. We'll find out more during Big 12 Media Days, but let's just go ahead and put a little asterisk by that. We'll have to come back to that one, okay? But Baylor projected to win 10 out of 12 games. They'll be the favorite in 10 out of 12 games. So interested on that one. Here's the other one that was interesting as well. Probably not too much for you guys. Interesting nonetheless. The 9-game one, and there's a lot of teams in the 9-game category, including North Texas, by the way. Which, by the way, I can't say I followed North Texas a lot, so I don't know what's going on over there. But North Texas is somehow in there. And Rice, by the way, is in there. Just throwing that out there. Shout out if you got friends or family or whatever it may be. I just want to shout out to the Texas teams. But the big one for us and our purposes in the conversation, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, 9 out of 12. 9 out of 12. So we've got Texas with kind of which is going to be the team that's favored to win the most. So basically that puts Texas more than likely, you just going off of this, as definitely getting to the championship game for sure as the number 1 seed. Then, based off of this, Oklahoma as well with 11. I don't know if I've mentioned them, but Oklahoma is at 11. So basically, there's a projection of Oklahoma probably being the favorite in 11 out of 12 games, Texas being the favorite out of 11 out of 12 games. Those two basically vying for 1 and 2 in the conference, which means the Red River would be for all the marbles, with Baylor knocking at the door outside looking in at the 10. Okay, so just throwing that out there. But again, something to be excited about, something to be hyped about. Like it again, we are in hype season. That's what this is. This is hype season. And look, everybody's gonna be so hyped, but there's gonna be a team that wins 4 games. Right? I mean, this is how it's going to go. Everyone's hyped right now. It's going to be a team that wins 3. This is going to be a team that gets blown out every single. But it doesn't matter because right now your team's undefeated, and now that's all that matters. Okay. Now I know what you guys are here for. Now I know what you guys want to talk about. Get your drinks ready. Unc's got his drink ready, and we're going to talk about the 2023 preseason All Big 12 football team. Toast to you guys. Okay, let's talk about, and I want to kind of set up before I get into this thing, because I know you guys want to talk about the specifics, and I'm going to get into the specifics in a moment, but I feel like I need to give you kind of a setup for the specifics that we're going to get into. And I want to get at, one of the things I love to do with you guys, when you guys watch the show, I like to give you some like behind the scenes, behind the veil kind of things. That's the purpose of the show. I want you guys to be humorous, and at times I want to, you guys to laugh and enjoy yourself, but I also want you to walk away feeling like you learned something new and you got some good information, right? So that's kind of the purpose of it. Let's talk about voting. Doesn't really like voting as relates to sports things, preseason teams, all those kind of things. I'm not a huge person into that. I don't like it. I don't participate in it for the most part. I'm gonna give you guys a story. I'm gonna give you guys a story that you guys are totally unaware of. Go anywhere. The story I'm going to tell you is going to be a fascinating story. It's going to be a great story. It's going to be appalling to you, but nonetheless, it's going to be told here. A story that probably hasn't been told in nearly 20 years. This is how good this story is going to be. All right. When I worked at the Tampa Tribune, right, which I said I worked there years ago, I remember being a high school reporter at the time. So you start off, you gotta work your way up. And anybody who's worked in this business or started a newspaper at some point, you just start as a high school reporter. This is kind of what it is. And I love high school reporting, by the way. And when Unc is old and just needs something to do, like I'll probably go out there and just cover a couple of games if there's a paper that exists in the town that I live in. Excuse me, because Tampa Tribune ain't standing. So one of the things that we would do, it's a couple of things. So we put together like our all county teams, aka like all district teams. Whatever it is in your county. If you played football, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You might have been a first teamer, a second teamer, an honorable mention. You clipped out the newspaper. Your parents clipped it out, right? And that's something you probably have in your scrapbook to this day, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a little bit of kind of an old school person, right? So, but here's a couple of things. When we would kind of decide who would be like on the all county team, right? We'd all get together, we'd meet, we'd have some pizzas, right? And so you had people who covered schools. I would cover, 5 or 6 schools were like my assignment. Everybody had different schools that they covered, right? And so we all would come to it, and essentially you would come to it almost trying to a certain degree fight for like the guys that you cover. And so there would be kind of like this back and forth. Let's say like this person was a quarterback here and this person was a quarterback here. Let's figure it out. And then it's like, all right, so if I fight so hard to get my quarterback on the first team in this meeting, right? And then he doesn't get in on the quarterback, then I come back and say, all right, listen, man, then you guys owe me on this one, right? And so then that's how it would work. So it was a lot of bartering that went back and forth. Overall, you tried to get it right. Overall, you wanted to do the right thing, but there was some give and take that happened within that whole situation. Now, the interesting thing, and here's the story, that they had, it is back in 2005, and in Hillsborough County, Florida, the Tampa Bay area, they have what is called the Guy Toff Award, GUYTOPH Award, right? Get named after Guy Toff, right? And it's kind of like the Hillsborough County Heisman Award, right? And so we as reporters would have an opportunity to vote for who essentially would be like the top football player and had the most prestigious award. Now, what they used to do is that it would be weighted, right? So just stay with me for a second, right? Just stay with me for a second. So if you voted for 1 through 10, right? And if you voted for someone number 1, they would get 10 points. You voted for someone 2, they would get 9. Voted for someone 3, you get what I'm saying, 8, go all the way down. And then to be number 10, then you would only get 1 point. And so what they would do is what player, had the most points when it was all said and done, that person would win the Guy Toff. This is kind of how it was. Well, 2005. I probably won't mention the coworker's name because the coworker passed a few years ago, and so I don't want to bring this up. Of course, you guys can Google it, but I had a coworker who was also the high school editor at the time, and she was very biased towards certain schools. And so there was a kid who really was the best player that year. His name was Marcelo Trey at a school named Robinson High School, right? And so Marcelo was really, really good. But that person who worked for us did not like that particular program, and she wanted someone else to win. Now, there was another kid by the name of Jared Faison who was from Hillsborough High School, and he went to University of Florida. He's probably the guy that should have won it that year. So what she did to torpedo Jared Faison, who was, one of the best, arguably the best player, was she voted him number 10, so he would only get 1 point, and then put Marcelo at number 1. So eventually, it basically to kind of screw with the whole thing. And you know what happens? Marcelo ends up winning this trophy, this most prestigious award, by 2 points, because the coworker I work with decided to screw someone over in order to go for their person. That literally happened. Now, here's what also ended up happening. It was so unethical that damn thing happened that eventually it got back to that program, Hillsborough High School. It got back to that program. It got back to that coach, and that coach basically demanded to see everybody's ballots. And then when they saw that she intentionally, because you can understand if you said 1 versus 2, that's fine. You can vote in number 2. That's fair, right? But she did all the way number 10, and because of that, she got essentially that came to light. They brought it to the newspaper, and the newspaper essentially fired her. They had to fire her. Why? Because reporters who were voting in this thing were rigging the damn votes. That literally happened. And so I've always been a person, as relates to when it comes to media voting in things, haven't been always so trusting. And here's what's the crazy thing. I went back and I found an article about this. And then when they asked her about, like, hey, what did you do? Like, that, that's, you got to fire for this. This is unethical. I'm looking at this quote, and she goes, I voted that way every year for 10 years at the Tribune because I wanted to give the person I thought should win the best chance to win. On that day of Marcella was given the trophy, I jokingly told Tribune sports editor Nick Puglisi, hey, my system worked. I still say I didn't do anything wrong. I can vote however I want. It's my vote. Think about it. You screwing over an 18-year-old, but you didn't care. That's why I've always been really leery of these votes from media members. I'm like, I don't know what the hell their agenda is or isn't. But I learned many years ago in this business, near 20 years ago, there's some people out there who are unscrupulous and scandalous. And you got to be careful. You got to be cognizant of that. I'm giving you behind the veil, behind the curtain kind of understanding of media members. By the way, we weren't allowed to vote in things anymore. And then when we were allowed in the rare occasions, this is what happened. And this is what I believe should happen for everybody who votes and stuff, especially like the preseason all Big 12 football team. To me, if you participate in something to that effect, right? If you're a media member and you vote in something like that, then to me, there needs to be 100% transparency, which means you need to reveal to the public how you voted and who you voted for, period. And don't hide behind it. Don't tweet it out when it's all said and done, but be responsible, be ethical, and show everybody this is who you voted for, so we know who we're dealing with, who you are, and there's no anything to like whisper stuff, because again, people do some foul stuff, as I just told you about, right? Now, when I worked at if you guys remember, it was one time. If you know, you may not remember. I mean, not required to know my whole damn life story. So for those of you who don't know, I'm like arrogant. If you remember, like you had to remember me. They don't have to remember me. I'll just tell you that at one time I was a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. And so, which is a prestigious honor for anyone who covers the NFL. And that was, and to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, now that was a process, okay? It starts in the summer where you get a list of candidates that's probably like 100, and you get this thing delivered in the mail that's probably like this big. It's almost kind of like a phone book in some ways, maybe a little bit, maybe smaller than a phone book, but for those of you who remember what that is, right? And so it's a year-long process of just going through stuff. There's one cut after another. That's another. There's a lot of things that go into that process of someone getting the Hall of Fame. And then when they finally get cut down, right, it just keeps going from one cut to another. And then you guys, I mean, you're getting information all the time. You have people emailing to you. You have people who are soliciting, like, what's it called in politics? Lobbyists. Right? You have people who are kind of lobbyists for the folks that they want into the Hall of Fame. So you may have someone like who's lobbying for like a John Lynch, and they're sending you information, a publicist, or all those kind of things. By the way, Paxton, just hold that question for a moment as far as a Texas Longhorn fan and things like that. I'll get to that in a second. Just come back to me on that one, Paxton. I just don't want to disrupt my train of thought, even though I kind of just did. And so here's what happens for folks to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? The day before the Super Bowl, we would go into a room, okay, in the hotel. We go into the room in the hotel, conference room, ballroom, whatever the case may be, and all the writers would be in there. And so what happens is, let's say there is there's someone from the Houston Texans that's up for a nomination for it. Then so it'd be like John McClain would then have to get up and present something to the room, and it was basically like he's arguing for why whoever Andre Johnson needs to be in the Hall of Fame, right? One of the best stories is the person who covered the Detroit Lions many years ago. And again, because there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of questions. Some people don't want guys in. Like it's a process, right? It's an all-day thing. It's from 8 o'clock in the morning to about 6 o'clock at night, sometimes 7, right? And then at the end of the day, I mean the Detroit Lions one, because it was when Barry Sanders was up. The person who covered the Lions at the time said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Barry Sanders," and then sat back down. But most people give like a 10, 15-minute speak, and then you get to ask questions, so on and so forth. And then that's how like you get into the Hall of Fame. I'm talking about it's literally like a year-long process of voting. It's a year-long process of Pro Football Hall of Fame voting in order to get into it. But then when you get into college football, and you get into these conference things, the preseason teams and the postseason teams and this and that, I think there's flaws in the system. And as I thought about it, I went through like 3 of them. Okay. The first flaw is this: there are homers in every college football market. There are homers in every college football market. Think of the markets that and the teams that you follow, or what? Not the teams that you follow, but the other teams. And think of some of the reporters, and you just know that they are just sunshine pumpers for their program, right? You just know that's just what they do. They'll never say a negative word. But guess what happens? Those people get to vote on preseason teams and all conference teams. How unbiased do you think those votes really are? They're not. Okay. There's also a recency bias. That's number 2 for me. There's a recency bias when it comes to voting. There's a recency because there are people who are like, I want to rep Florida, right? And I want to make sure like folks in Florida kind of get represented, right? Or that's what I predominantly watch is these kind of games in the area. I kind of watch certain things. So because of recency bias, because like, are you really going out of your way to watch college football programs of other in other parts of the country? There's a recency bias to people who vote, right? And then there's the third one. This is kind of the tougher one, where sometimes you just don't know enough about other players. Like, I mean, here's the thing. We're gonna start kind of breaking this thing down in a second. But one of the reasons why I don't vote for like the Big 12 stuff is that I told you like all the work that I put in and the pride that I put in as relates to the whole Pro Football Hall of Fame voting, right? There was a year-long thing. To me, when I get an email about something, man, I'm gonna tell you right now, and let me just keep it a buck with you. And if you're gonna judge me on this, so be it. I'll take it. It is what it is. But if you ask me right now, Anwar, name me the offensive guard for BYU. I got nothing for you. Tell me who the left tackle is at UCF. I've got nothing for you. Tell me who is the center at Cincinnati. Go down the list. Name me 10 offensive linemen in the Big 12. I don't know. If you feel like I should know, I mean, let me know. But no, I don't. And so the reason why I don't vote is because I don't know. But the thing is, there's people I like out there who won't admit their weakness, and they will vote. They'll vote anyway. And you know who they're going to vote on? The people that they know. It's just that simple. I'll just vote on these guys, or these guys that I've seen, or these guys that I've recognized. And they won't really know the whole fullness of this is what it all looks like. So that's why I always take it. So that's the setup. That's the setup. Now, Paul, yes, I could name 10 Texas offensive linemen, but that would be the only guys I voted for. And so that's why I don't do this. And that's why I'm really leery of this whole thing. But that's kind of the backdrop. And that will lead us into everything that we're about to discuss right now. Because if you listen to it and heard it, everything I'm about to tell you is going to make perfect sense, because I've seen a lot of you guys have been questioning it on Twitter this today, and now I think I can piece it all together for you. So for right now, Blake, go ahead and put on the screen for me. Let's go ahead and start getting the preseason team kind of started, right? Can you put something on the screen for me, Blake? What do you got first? I'll roll with it, and let's go from there. What do you got, Blake? All right, first, so we'll start with Texas. Okay, Texas ends up having 5 players that are represented on the 2023 preseason All Big 12 team. And they are, of course, led by Jalen Ford, who was named the preseason Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Really happy for him. We'll come back to him. Obviously, Xavier Worthy was on that team as well, along with Jatavian Sanders, the tight end, which I think that should go without saying how good he is. Kelvin Banks Jr. Gets on there as a sophomore offensive lineman, and junior defensive lineman Byron Murphy II was on that team today. So it was 5 guys that were on the team. 5 looks like to be the number to beat as far as, according to University of Texas, guys on the team. There's a little semantics because Kansas State ends up with 5 guys on the team, but they end up having a guy on the team that wasn't technically on the team, but he ended up kind of getting, like newcomer of the year. So it is like a little semantics there because Jalen Ford gets kind of both. So, it's interesting as relates to that, right? So Texas is against it. Now, so let me explain this to you. Because now with that backdrop, I can explain a couple of things for you to answer some questions, right? The Jalen Ford thing makes all the sense in the world, right? When you look at Jalen Ford, 35 games, 15 starts, for a Jalen Ford, last season, he has 119 tackles, 61 solo, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 4 interceptions. He's a guy that last season, when I did all these videos, I had stood on the table. I said and projected, I said he's going to have a breakout season. That's my guy. And every time I said it, the guys on the OB staff kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But I was like, nope, that's my guy. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. They kept saying, I don't think there's any good. They don't have any good linebackers. No, they had a good linebackers. Jalen Ford was one of them. And he emerged into being one of the better ones. And now he ends up being a team leader, right? So you've got Jalen Ford that is set, that it's all done. You have Xavier Worthy. Again, that should go without any kind of explanation at that point because Xavier is Xavier. We know what he's able to do from a touchdown perspective. He's the only guy on the team that's unanimous selection. And look, it makes all the sense in the world, not only based off of what he was able to do, but he was able to do. I think that Texas OU game is a game that he did so well that, you're able to take a note, a mental note. And of course, Texas wins 49-0. And so, at the end of the day, it shows, again, sometimes when you're so close to a situation, it shows the respect that Xavier has, sometimes maybe outside of Austin. But because sometimes, last season, he didn't always get all that respect. And I'm not going to rehash and go through all that kind of stuff. We've all gone through our trauma. We're all trying to bury that thing. We're all trying to move on, right? You got Xavier Worthy. And then, of course, you have, Kelvin Banks. Now, here gets Jatavian. Let me go. That makes all the sense in the world too, right? He's the number 2 tight end in the country at this moment. So who else the hell are you going to vote for? Kelvin Banks. So there's been questions for some that said, well, why is Kelvin Banks not a unanimous selection? He should have been a unanimous selection. And yes, it makes all the sense in the world that Kelvin Banks should have been a unanimous selection. But what did I tell you before? What did I tell you one of the flaws of the system is that you're going to have people who vote who don't know every single player. And I'm sorry, but yes, we know Kelvin Banks is that dude. We know how great he is. But at the end of the day, does a guy voting from BYU know that? Does a guy from Cincinnati know that? Does a guy from UCF who covers UCF, does he know that? You know what I'm saying? Does the person who covers West Virginia, do they know all about Banks? They should. But you got to think, it's not just one person who from each market that gets the chance to vote. There's lots of people. Lots of people get a chance to vote. There's hundreds of people that have an opportunity to vote. So it's not just going to be like, oh, it's 12 people and that's how you went about it. There's lots. So you can't expect everybody from every single team to know something as specific as an offensive lineman, even though it's a left tackle. It's asking a lot. Okay. I know there's some questions online today as well as relates to A.D. Mitchell. Hey, how does Kansas State get Treshaun Ward, the running back, right? How does that guy get newcomer of the year? What about A.D. Mitchell, right? It's a good question. It's a valid question. I believe my man Doc Texas asked that question. A shout out to him. He's one of my favorite follows on Twitter. So I like Doc. He's very consistent with his tweets, his trolling. He's a good dude. So everything I'm about to say will be, when he said it, and I saw a lot of people chiming in. I'm like, he's got a pulse. He's got a pulse on the thought process of Texas fans, and I'm like, I like that. I'm going to go ahead and address that at some point tonight. So everything I'm about to say is out of pure respect for him and who he is as a person, as a man. The thing is, when I went to kind of as a, again, there's a flaw. Not everyone's going to know about an A.G. Mitchell. The thing about Treshaun Ward is, in 2021, he's got 551 rushing yards in 12 games, 81 carries. But he also had 21 receptions for 185. Last season, 2022, he has 649 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns, right? So basically, you're talking about a guy with about 1,200 yards after 2 seasons. He had 7 touchdowns last season, 4 beforehand, so 11 touchdowns in 2 seasons. So you're talking about that body of work. It's like we know what A.D. Mitchell is or can be, but when we start talking about, okay, who's accomplished a little bit more, he's accomplished a little bit more at Florida State. Now, A.D. Mitchell, of course, he does it at Georgia. It's but we can say that, and it makes sense to us, but to someone else who is going to say, who again covers another program, who covers a Texas Tech, or you go down the list of programs that are here, that they cover a West Virginia, whatever the case is, do they know A.D. Mitchell? Probably not. They probably heard of it. They know little things about him. They don't know him the way we do, right? And so that's going to be that explains why a guy like A.D. Mitchell wouldn't get the nod over a guy like Treshaun Ward. I'm not trying to justify the system, but I'm trying to explain it so you guys can understand what happens, going forward, and maybe why certain guys don't always get the love and the attention that they absolutely deserve. And again, A.D. Mitchell, when it's all said and done, by the end of the season, everybody might know his name. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody might know his name by the time we get there, but going into it, it's just going to be kind of hard. So, but I was happy to see the guys. Some people question about the DBs, and I think Texas has good DBs. They don't have any, don't have DBs that were known for making splash plays, tons of interceptions. You don't have guys like that, where you look at it like, oh man, like that guy had 4 interceptions, that guy had 5 interceptions, that guy's coming back. That's the person that everyone's going to know about. They had some good DBs, but again, what is the average voter looking for? The average voter is looking for, INTs. And Texas really wasn't a team that was loading up on the INTs last season. So because you don't have DBs that were loading up on INTs, you're not going to get those guys in, right? Doesn't mean that. Here's the thing. This is beautiful of it. It has nothing to do with the team success. This list, when it's all said and done, is cute, but I guarantee you, none of you are going to remember it when it's all said and done. You won't give a damn about this list in November or December. It will mean nothing. It's for us to talk about for preseason hype or preseason expectations here in July. But if we're talking and clinging to this, and this is all you got, this is all you talked about, this is all the season has amounted to, was these 5 guys on the list, and the whole damn season was a failure, and this is crap. But when it's all said and done, literally, Well, I was going to rip it up for dramatic effect, but I still want to kind of I still would have got to go through some of the guys on the list. But for the most part, you could go ahead and get rid of it. So let's go through some of the other things that kind of stood out for this list for me. Paxton, I haven't forgotten your question, so I'll get to you in a second. If you got any other questions too, because I probably want to go for about another like 10 minutes. If you guys some questions there, go ahead and start getting those in the chat for me now, so I can go ahead and hopefully address it for you guys before I go ahead and start to shut this thing down. So the things that kind of stood out for me on those lists: Jalen Daniels, Kansas quarterback. I'm a little surprised that he got the nod over Dylan Gabriel, just a little bit, just because Dylan got to play in all the games, and I was a little bit. I don't know if I voted, I had to vote that counted. I might have leaned a little bit towards Dylan, but I get Jalen. When Jalen was healthy, he seemingly was the best quarterback in the Big 12, and so I'm not 100% mad at that. And when it was all said and done, I think Kansas actually had 4 players on the preseason All Big 12 football team. 4 players from Kansas, which is all kinds of fascinating when it's all said and done, because I hate to be that guy, but I'll just have to be that guy. That guy just means I'm just keeping it real. Like Kansas, at the end of the day, they were bowl eligible, and I know Jalen got hurt, but at the end of the day, they still won 6 games. It's a hell of a lot for Kansas. I'm not negating that. I'm not negating the job that the coaching staff has done. I'm not trying to knock it, but I'm just start thinking about from an individual standpoint, an individual skill standpoint. I mean, maybe, but I was like 4 guys from Kansas, 1 guy from Oklahoma. That threw me. Right, there was 1 guy from Oklahoma was on this team. Ethan Downs, defensive lineman, was on this team, and that's it. That's it from OU. That really threw me off for a second, because I'm like, wait, that OU should have a little bit more than that. And again, now I'd have to question, okay, well, who are the guys that'll be on there? And I'm sure there's been articles by the OU writers about for as guys who maybe got snubbed or had an opportunity to be on there, something like that, but. I wonder, I don't want to underestimate OU, because I just feel like anytime I've underestimated OU over the last few years, it's just bit me in the ass. But I think it does show, though, and I will say this, and I know OU fans get a little pissy when I bring up this guy's name, but it's fair what I'm about to say. It is what it is. At the end of the day, like Lincoln Riley when Lincoln Riley was here. You didn't have these worries. Like you just did it. The question was how many OU players were going to be on the team, not or how many are they going to have more than one. Now it's clearly up to Venables to get this thing rebuild it and get it back to where it once was. And I don't think Venables is a bad coach. He's a good recruiter, much better than I thought he would ever be. So I'm definitely not going to knock Venables. I'm not going to doubt him. I'm still, the jury's still out for me. That was year 1 for him. But OU clearly, from building it back up, especially since Lincoln sold a lot of the good guys with him. So as far as building it back up, that's what the challenge is over there. But I was kind of surprised, as far as that is concerned. I think TCU ended up with four guys that were actually on the team. And again, I'm not quite sure what that makes for TCU is concerned. I see Tech also had, a couple of guys, on there. As like I said, Kansas State with the 5, it seems like a whole lot of love. And I think Baylor only had 1 player, if I'm correct, on this team. As I'm looking through it, Richard Reese, of course, the running back from Baylor, no problem with that. But it's also interesting that the math's not adding up, because I don't know how Baylor, according to that number that I gave you guys at the beginning, that Baylor is projected to be favored in 10 out of 12 games, and they've only got 1 player on the preseason All Big 12 football team. Again, it's not that math don't add up to me. So something about that's like funny money. That's like crypto money to me. So it's funny money. It don't make any sense to me. Yeah, and shout out to everybody who told me to get into crypto a year or so ago. Thanks. My money's gone. You guys are idiots. You guys are idiots. Thank God I didn't invest more. I'm just gonna invest in fantasy football. But again, guys, it was all said and done. Those are kind of the main things, the main standouts for me as far as that old thing was concerned. All right, let me go into some of the questions that we had. Paxton, I've been putting your question off for a little bit. And Blake, if there are other questions after Paxton's, feel free to put them on the screen. If not, we'll get ready to wind it down. Paxton asked me if I was a Texas fan, which is actually a really good question, to be quite honest with you. Because there are people who cover college football teams who are actually fans of the team. Like there are literally people who have tattoos of their team logo on their bodies, which I guess technically a tattoo would have to be on someone's body. So here's what I will say as relates to a Texas fan. And first of all, being a guy who grew up in Florida, I think someone else had pegged it. I grew up as an FSU fan. So FSU really became kind of my team because one of the guys from my high school was a friend of mine by the name of Shannon Baker, who went to FSU and got a chance to play there. And then he played there all 4 years, started, and then he kind of lost his starting job as a senior to a freshman wide receiver. I don't know if it's Tamrick Vanover or something to that effect. Anyway, no story short was I grew up as an FSU fan. So I got a little bit older, kind of waned a little bit. I went to USF, but we didn't have a football team at the time, so I kind of still hung on to FSU. And then as time just went by, I started watching games for fun more so than fandom. And so I just started watching good games. So my thing is this. My life is better when Texas wins. I'm just gonna keep it a buck with you. My life is better than when Texas wins. Why? You guys, from a message board standpoint, are a lot easier to talk to, get along with, less confrontational, less dickish. Like it's very fun when Texas wins. Like it's horrible when they lose. I mean, and when they're bad, it's worse. Because people are just so nasty. It's almost like, what it becomes like? It's almost kind of like you know how people get during election years where people just become nasty? You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of how it becomes. So I'm for me, it's like a weird thing. I'm not necessarily a fan. Like I don't really have like Texas things like in my house. I have a Texas room, and I think I may have something like a mirror. But it was like kind of a Texas themed mirrors, like a Longhorn thing. So I got it for a Texas room to kind of go with it. So I'm not like a fan per se. But if you ask me at any given Saturday, if I had a choice of Texas winning or losing, like damn right, I'd much rather Texas win because I don't want you guys to lose. And another thing that is important for me is that like overall, I feel like Texas fans are good people. Like I feel good. Overall, I feel like they're good people. Like they're good people. Y'all have treated me really well. Y'all have embraced me. You guys, some people it took us a little bit of time, but Texas fans have been good as far as like interacting with me and things like that. I feel like the love. So I guess for you guys, I want y'all to win. Maybe by default, maybe that makes me a fan. But I feel like as a fan, I'm upset when my team loses, right? And I'm not upset that for myself when Texas loses. I feel bad for you guys because I know how much y'all want them to win. Like that's where it is. So I don't know if that answers the question or not. It's probably maybe there's a gray area in there, but I want Texas to win so y'all are happy. I want Texas to be in the Big 12 championship so you guys feel good about your team, that you don't have to go to work on Monday and have to, be ashamed, that you guys can boast and be on them Twitter streets or down the streets or whatever you're going to be, how are you going to be in the streets? But anyway, I want it for you guys. So, no, it's a good question. So maybe it makes me a fan in some way. I would say more than anything else, I've got y'all back. So because I have your back, that I'm probably more of a fan of making sure you guys are happy, or y'all. I get a little, get them Florida things come out in me every once in a while. You know what I'm saying? So there is that. Blake, were there any other questions that people had up there to throw up? Let me know, Blake, because if not, no, didn't see any. And no, I do not have a tramp stamp of Bevo on me. I'm sure there's someone does. And the other thing too, I'm gonna say one thing other that's kind of as it comes to mind. It's kind of like I feel like Texas fans get a lot of shit that sometimes seems undeserved. Like the horns down thing is such a weird thing to me. Again, I've been covering this team for like 10 years. I don't understand why, if you're another program and you're a recruit, for instance, and you're at OU, why are you throwing horns down? Why? What does that have to do with the program that you're at? Like, it just doesn't make logical sense to me. If you're at your program, all is good. You're taking a tour of it. Everything's good. Why do you care anything about Texas at that moment? It literally makes no sense to me. So there's a part of me that I look at them like this. I kind of want y'all to win because some people are out here idiots. It doesn't make any sense. Like, one day I'll have to tell y'all, I have to tell you, the me in Baker Mayfield nearly coming to blows at one point in downtown Austin, coming outside of a bar because one of his crew decided to just, they saw me, they recognized me, and then, tapped me on the shoulder, bothered me and shit, and then start throwing the horns down. I'm like, the hell? Like, I'm sitting there trying to have drinks, and you and your crew are trying to harass me. So then it got out of hand from there. One day I'm going to tell the story, but I'm not going to tell the story while Baker's in the league because I don't want him to have no smoke. But at some point, maybe when he's out of the league, it is not a big deal. Then it is what it is, and then Unc will tell the story. But for right now, Unc doesn't want to be a part of the story, so it'll come out at some point, but just not right now. All right, guys, listen. It's been a great show. Next week, I will be in Arlington, Big 12 Media Days. Unc will be in the hotel room. I'll be solo, but Unc will be in the hotel room. Tyler said that should be soon. You're right. It might be in another year or so when Baker's out the league. I will tell you the story, but I just know the story's kind of good, and I just don't want it to be something that people cling to. I don't want it to be something that ever affects his career or anything to that effect. So I'm just like, I'll let this thing ride. I won't be the bigger person on this thing. But when the time comes, I was going to tell this story. Next week, I'll be back. Don't forget, Friday, if you're watching this thing this week, we will have K&A, kind of our question and answer thing that's going on. Like I said, Big 12 Media Days is next week. So next week, when Unc will be here, I'll be in my hotel room, kind of broadcasting, breaking down every single thing. The following week after that, Nashville SEC Media Days. If the Wi-Fi is good, Unc will be telling you what's going on there in Nashville because I will be there as well. Got a lot of good things, a lot of fun things planned. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for watching the show. Once again, shout out to my main man, Eric Sells Homes DFW. Check him out. It's time to buy a house, sell a house. He's got you. For main man Blake, who's producing behind the scenes for all you guys. Oh, by the way, shout out to Tom G. I haven't seen him tonight, so I hope he's doing well. I have to give him a text message. But remember what? Last thing. You know how I always close it out. I always say, hey, live each day like it's your last, because one day it will be. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.